around us, renewing and refreshing. We thank you that those within our friends and our families have had good recovery from surgeries and illnesses in the hospital. Lord, we ask that you would continue to look after us and shepherd us and guide us. As we enter into the business of the work of the city of Glen Rose, Lord, may we be clear-minded and focused on what is best for the community and would bring honor to you. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Are we not?
We are. I don't know why that TV keeps going on.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Present.
Councilmember Harris,
Here.
Councilmember Freeze,
Present.
Councilmember Conrad,
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Before we get started, I would like to introduce our interim city administrator, Wayne McKesson.
Yay. Welcome, welcome.
Glad you
In the interest of time, we want to ask for a speech.
There you go.
All right, let's move on to our citizen comments. Each person who addresses the city council shall do so in an orderly manner. All wishing to speak must approach the podium, state their name and address for the record. The comments from the public during the agenda item for the public hearings, as well as the agenda items for individual consideration, will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Your time cannot be given to any other person, and you will only be allowed to speak once. At this time, let me remind everyone to please turn your cell phones off or on silent. Council members are reminded not to talk or surf the internet during the meeting. All right, I have Eric Bellinger. State your name.
My name is Eric Bellinger. I live at 1193 Rivercrest Drive. I think since the last time I came here, you've added a minute to the comment section, which is nice. I am here. I've already spoke to your manager this week about my concern. I've been speaking to Judge Chambers for 2-3 years, and I've been speaking to the sheriff. They all basically fundamentally agree that this is going to happen, which is our currency is about to implode. The country that we've known for 200 years is about to end. All republics come to an end, and that is going to be on our watch. Pretty much in the last 2 weeks, every single country in the world has signed an agreement to China to drop us and go with their currency. The King of Saudi Arabia today announced that once the U.S. currency is gone, there should be a global oil embargo on the United States because he sees us as the enemy of the world. I work in the oil field. We were told this morning that be ready in 2 to 3 months, that there will be no time off for the rest of the year until further notice. That means Thanksgiving, Christmas, because we're assuming we'll be at war, and since no one's going to give us anything, we're going to need all our own oil and gas ourselves. There's nothing really the town government can do to stop any of this. Of course, our own federal government can't even do anything to stop this, but we desperately need to at least acknowledge it. And the only thing the town government can do at this point is for you, Judge Chambers, the sheriff, the town administrator, I urge you to come together and to come to some conclusion on how do we inform the general public of our county things that they're going to need when this occurs, probably in the next 6 months. I mean, there's really not a lot of space here. There's going to be, with no currency, there's going to be, of course, mass chaos. There's going to be total disruption in food. Though I work in the oil field, I am in trucking. All my other friends in trucking that do reefers are basically telling me that the ports are completely empty. There's nothing in them. There's nothing in our plans. That basically our food plants are being, for the last 2 years, are being burned to the ground. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. If you don't know that, get online and you can see that someone is crashing planes and trains and trucks into all of our food plants. And we're going to have a big problem with food. We have no fertilizer because the top 3 countries in the world who produce fertilizer are Belarus, Russia, and China.
Time's up. Thank you.
Okay, so we need to prepare for this because this is coming. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on a non-agenda item? Well, let's move on to our public hearing. I'm going to open this public hearing at 5:36 p.m. First public hearing regarding proposed changes to the City of Glen Oaks Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, zoning, by the addition of cigar bar / smoking room. Do we have any public comments on this item? And I'm going to close this public hearing at 5:36. And we'll move on to individual items for consideration. First item, item 2, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding an ordinance amending the City of Glen Oaks Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14, zoning, by the addition of cigar bar, smoking room. Stacy, are we going to have Ms. Streeter speak to this?
I can go ahead and give you the summary, and if you have any questions, then she can certainly answer those.
Okay.
So they met on March 28th to talk about cigar bar smoking rooms. They voted to recommend amending the ordinance by adding a cigar bar smoking room definition and listing that as allowable use in B1, B2, B3, and industrial. And Mr. Lowry has reviewed that and is good with the definition as presented.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Okay, Ms. Ness?
Is this, well, now that I cleared up, but it's not a bar thing, but it's about cigar bars. Is this about a cigar bar opening where we know it's a cigar bar, or is this gonna change restaurants to where they can have a smoking
It
room?
is a cigar bar solo.
Okay,
So this
that's what I
came to
wanted to
us
make
because
sure.
there was actually a request.
Yeah, there was an individual that reached out to the city requesting.
I just wanted to make sure that we
But
weren't
this is-
changing the laws to
No,
where.
this is strictly about having a cigar bar that may or may not also sell alcohol.
Okay, that was my question.
And that is actually why there is the limitation about the 15% to ensure it
Is a cigar bar.
is a cigar.
Any other questions, comments from the council? Okay, Ms. Streeter, do you have anything?
Oh, I have one question. What precludes them from being like a restaurant? And then also a cigar bar?
So honestly, I think Stan's better qualified to answer this, but I'll tell you what I know. In the state of Texas, there are laws against food service and smoking. So you have to have, you can't do, I understand this, you can't do food service in a smoking area. So to allow them to have a active cigar bar, there really isn't about food, it's about the cigar or cigarette, tobacco paraphernalia. The reason that we needed to have a separate definition for it as opposed to just allowing it to happen is that we don't, because the state doesn't allow smoking in a food service area or building, public buildings, et cetera, you had to actually define it and then give a percentage of sales to the cigar sale of it to qualify to be allowed to be open. Did I get that right, Stan?
Yes, you did a very good job of explaining that. Thank you.
Okay. So a restaurant that is selling food that has a large portion of food sales is not going to be allowed to have a smoking areas.
If it's primarily a cigar bar, why would only 15% of its revenue be, is that just a state number?
No, we went through a bunch of different cities and numbers were all over the board. And so we erred to the low side. That number could have been 30%. Other states had it, other cities have it at 60 and 70%. Just
I
knowing
mean, I could
that,
see alcohol sales, because if you have if you have 2 bourbons and 1 cigar, it's gonna be 60-70% alcohol and
Right, so we
So-
just, we went with a lower number just because we felt like that was advantageous as a start, because we don't actually have any in town yet. We don't know what it's really gonna look like. We put this in because there is talk of somebody who wanted to know whether or not they could do it. And so that percentage can always be changed through any public hearing and city council vote. We just started low, based on what we saw from all the other cities that we were checking. We just kind of took the low number and said, let's just see what happens.
Seems like it should be a little higher, maybe like 25%.
I think when I looked at all the numbers, 30 was a normal number that we saw, but it went anywhere from 15% up to 60%, what I saw. So I'm okay with whatever number you went. We just went low because undue burden on a business ownership is trying to get started.
Would this
Thanks for
allow,
being proactive on this.
Yeah.
Well,
would this allow a hookah bar?
Technically,
Yeah.
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 I would assume, Stan,
What was the question? I'm sorry. a
would it
hookah
allow a
bar?
hoop bar?
What do they
Well, I
smoke?
guess the only way I can answer that
Alcohol.
is if they comply with the definition, then yes.
Yeah,
Regardless of how they burned it.
The smoking room.
it's a smoking room.
Effectively, yes.
Other questions from the council?
It would not allow an illegal substance hookah bar.
Right.
Correct.
Good addendum there.
That's kind of where I was,
Yeah.
what are they
Yeah.
smoking those?
That's it for me.
State local ordinance definitely can't override state law.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have to worry about that. Mr. Dirty, anything else you'd like to add?
This was, I'm here for questions.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the audience? Patty?
I mean, I guess the one thing I want to point out is we did put it in B1, B2, B3,
And then
because that's where we've allowed the bars and other types of establishments of this nature, and we did put it in I because that's where we've also allowed things.
Anything further? Okay, do I have a motion to approve ordinance number 2023.04.11A?
So moved.
A motion and a second. Motion from Ms. Conrad. Sorry, I'm slow today. Second from Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed? 4-1. Approved. Move on to item 3, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding approval of work order number 40 as part of the general services agreement with EHT to provide engineering and surveying services for ground storage tank improvements at well site number 2. Jim, Mr. Motley?
First of all, Chris wasn't able to be here tonight. He's at a water conference in Houston. But he said he could be reached by cell phone if we need, if anybody's got any questions or anything for him. So back in February of 2022, we were preparing for the upcoming budget, and EHT provided some preliminary numbers for what a new storage tank would cost at well site number 3, which is the one going out towards the dog pound. It's a pretty large tank. I think the last one we built was half that size, and it was kind of before COVID, or I think it was during COVID, kind of before the supply chain was messed up, and it was much cheaper than what they're saying this one's gonna cost. Currently, I think y'all approved $850,000 in the budget to build that tank. Now things have changed a little bit, and they're expecting it to come in, when it bids, it'll probably be higher than that. So I'm not sure how you want to handle it, but if we could get the work order signed and we go ahead and get the design, send it to TCEQ for approval, which takes probably 2 or 3 months, I'm guessing. And then maybe bid it, see where we come in at and go from there. It is way more expensive. Maybe we get started towards the end of this budget cycle and budget a little more money next year or amend the budget, I'm not sure.
Questions?
Can you remind me what's our lifetime looking like on this? Like, are we 2 years from this thing's gotta go, 10
Well,
months? I mean, I'm a proponent of let's do it, but.
Different opinions on the life expectancy of those old galvanized
Mhm.
old tanks. I was told that's a 20-year tank. That one was built in 1976.
Okay, and done. Okay, I got you. We're good. It's literally like.
The last one, the one we replaced up there, I don't know if y'all remember, it ruptured.
Right,
And so that's what we're,
Trying to avoid.
you got me. We're good.
I've got a couple questions. To go ahead and do the initial part that you said, we're not gonna need to move any money or anything. That's taken care of. It's just after we get the engineering in, then we go out on the bid process, and then we may need to worry about the additional funds. Okay, and the other question, through all of the papers and stuff, it talks about a VFD. That means volunteer fire department in my mind, and I know that's not what they're talking about.
no, it's not. That's basically a motor that has a variable speed, so it can start out at low RPMs and ramp up. And basically what that allows you to do is drain your standpipe. Your water standpipe is where your pressure comes from. Well, if you drain that, you don't have pressure anymore. So that pump, you can turn it on and run it and run it at higher RPMs to keep your pressure where you need it.
And we're talking about the storage tank, not the standpipe.
Correct. I just asked EHT to include that, where if we have to take that standpipe out of service, we'll already be set up for that. So it costs anywhere from 10 to 15 grand to set that up. Which is what we ran into at the one we recently painted. When it came time to take it out of service, they said, drain it when you're ready to get it painted. I'm like, well, I can't drain it without a plan of action to keep everybody with water, you know? And they said, well, you need VFDs. Oh, we didn't budget for that. So I'm trying to be ahead of the game when it comes time.
Thank you.
Any further questions for? Comments on this one? Questions? Right, do I have a motion to approve work order number 40 with EHT as presented?
So moved.
I
Second.
have a motion from Mr. Freeze. Who was the second?
Me.
A second from Ms. Conrad. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 5-0 approved. Let's move on to item 4, discussion, consideration, possible action regarding the establishment of a line item in the year 2022-2023 City of Glen Rose general fund budget to be able to accept, track, and accumulate funds of hot tax dollars for the purpose of city council directed projects and discuss overall collection and expenditure processes and procedures. Ms. Harris.
Mayor, a quick question, Stan. If I have a question for CVB Director Harris, is it possible for her to come in here and answer those?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Can she just stay here in the audience?
yes, she can.
Right now she can?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay.
Kelly, do you want to sit in here?
She's like.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, it's up
Do you
to
want to step out and I'll come get you every time I have a question for you? Okay.
But he wants to ask you now, I think.
Either.
You have a question, Laura?
Okay.
Thanks. Just, I want to know what my options are, so.
Mr. Freeze? Mrs. Ryan?
Yeah, I had requested this to be put on the agenda just because I wanted to, I wanted the opportunity for us to accumulate the $50,000 in hot tax dollars that we had budgeted back in budget season. And I realize we are limited in, what we can do with those tax dollars. But as we are in April now and May, and we don't necessarily have anything that that I'm aware of, that we would like to spend this $50,000 on in a council-directed project, I was thinking we could recoup that money, set it into our general fund, and just kind of park it and hold on to it for this fiscal year. And then if we decide to do something again in the next fiscal year, we would have those tax dollars, that we could either combine, and that was the idea behind accumulating. We could encumber the funds for a larger project. There's a number of things that we could do with the hot tax dollars. If we had an idea presented to us, or if we came up brainstormed on something that, we thought was a good expenditure.
So it would be in an account that is still protected, for lack of a better term, for hot tax use only. So there is no ability to say, oh, you know what, we could use this for. It would legally, it has to be used for hot tax, right?
Yeah.
And then from a budget perspective, do we have the ability to put in the budget, a line item budget of $50,000 for CVB activities and have it general like that? Or do we have to have something specific?
I mean, you can have, if I can interject here, council, I mean, as long as you segregate the funds, you don't have to dictate what exact purpose you're going to use those funds for. I mean, as you've already acknowledged, they've got to be used for the statutory purposes of hot tax, but you don't have to pre-identify, if you will, exactly what project you plan to spend that on.
We do have some wayfinding signs that we haven't discussed except through the comprehensive plan, thank you, that we need to look at, but we already pretty much kind of had this discussion, and we've got an interlocal agreement with the county, and the CVB handles these funds. They are in her budget, and she's got a line item, she's got it the budgeted, she has it all right there. She's not spending that money on anything except for what we direct it to be spent for. And there is already the interlocal agreement with the county. I think we need to just leave it alone because this has already been gone through. We've already discussed it till we were blue in the face when we were doing it before. And with the interlocal agreement, we don't need to mess that up.
Well, they're already not following the local agreement because the funds aren't coming to us and we're writing the checks to the county. Funds are going directly to the county, which is not the way the interlocal agreement is written. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just want to make sure that everything is factual that's being presented.
May I ask a question?
Let me finish my thought here. When we budgeted, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, Stacy, when we budgeted, we actually allowed for that $50,000 as part of the CVB budget to go back to the city for city funded. So we're not requesting anything we haven't already approved during our budget season. We're not changing anything. My understanding, and Mr. Freeze, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. My understanding is that we're just trying to capture that we've already approved in our budget. Is that correct?
That was my intention,
Okay.
yes.
So we're not trying to take anything away from CVB. This is something we've already discussed until we're blue in the face during the budget season to make sure that money was allocated. So this isn't something we're just trying to create.
But it already is allocated.
It's
And she
already
gives us copies of the budget every
But
month.
the $50,000 is something that was part of her budget, part of our budget, that was towards council-driven projects.
It was approved by both entities, and I really thought that the money was going to come back to the city. It was going to be parked in the
It
city.
has to stay in her account.
No, it doesn't. It's a city approved.
Where it's sitting right now, does it have the ability to accumulate? So to your point about having a cumulative effect, where it's sitting right now, is there, the ability for that cumulative effect to take place there?
That would be.
That was my first question.
Yeah.
Did you hear that, CVB Director Harris? Question was, the $50,000 that is an annual contribution, would it be accumulating in your account as well?
Yes.
Okay, so there's $50,000 in it now, next fiscal year, it'll go to 100,000 if
This
it's
budget
unused.
year, we decided 50,000. It's not set for every budget year for 50,000. If next year, I'll decide if you want to put 75,000 and we still haven't used the 50,000, that would still be in there as,
So instead of there being 50,000 and we decided 75, then next year there'd be 125,000.
Right.
If the 50, okay.
So it's already,
Is that already shown in the accounting that you provided to us?
yes,
Specifically outlines that money that's council for?
yes, and I gave you a copy in there. I think it's the second page. On the second page, on the back of the second page. At the very bottom, it says unauthorized projects. This is the city's budget. The county does not have this in theirs. Only the city has this 50,000 in their budget set aside.
Do you have an account number? Do you have an account number?
I can get it from them. This was, I'll get you the account number.
Do we have any further questions for CPD Director Harris?
Because a lot of these were new accounts that we had to set up within the systems.
I do. I'm just, obviously, I mean, if the funds are available, I'm trying to figure out the importance that Councilmember Freeze has that they come to the city, rather than, and why it would matter to you if they did or didn't. That's where I'm.
Question for both, right?
Yeah, I'd like to know where both of you guys stand on that, because it seems like that you're fairly indignant on your position, both of you, and I don't really understand what the difference is.
Well, part of the reasoning why, when it went over, when we combined and it was sent over to the county, was because it has to be billed each month. We send out a billing each month to all the lodging partners for them to be able to send us the report back on how much they made in local hotel tax, how many nights they had occupied, and so forth. They moved that over to this department so that it would ease up the city staff from having to send out those bills, having to make the deposits, make the entries into the journal entry, and then cut a check for the amount and send copies over. It just figured just to be easier to send it all over to the
Was that
CDB.
a conversation that you had with city staff? Is that an agreement that you guys made? Because it's not.
It's in
I'm not
the,
arguing.
it's in the interlocal
It's
agreement.
not in the interlocal agreement. That's not the way that it's written in the interlocal agreement. And I understand that's the way it's been happening. It's just we don't have any paperwork that specifically tracks when that change happens. We just need to make sure that's documented.
Ready, hold on. On the first amended interlocal agreement, number allocations of funds, E, county may request that all hotel tax be paid directly to county by the hoteliers, short-term rentals to alleviate city staff from having to bill and collect hot funds, as well as presenting checks payable to county for payment of tax.
But isn't there an additional language that says
How to what?
how that has to go into effect?
No, that's just.
How that has to what? I'm sorry, I couldn't go
Go
into
like
it.
that.
Like, how is the city notified that that's happening?
Well,
with her report.
what talking about collections?
That change happened? I'm not arguing with anybody. Everyone's kind of getting up in arms. I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong. What I'm saying
No, I don't
is,
understand.
there's the change happened at one point, but we don't really have any records of why that happened, except for it started happening. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, I'm just saying I want to make sure that we have everything documented correctly. So nobody can come back 5 years down the line and say, y'all are doing this wrong, why? I'm trying to make sure that everyone is covered.
Well, first off, before we went into this interlocal agreement, we spoke with THLA to find out if it was legal and how it needed to be done. Second off, I mean, this was put in there to alleviate staff, and Dee and Chip were part of that committee that went through this on that. I know staff was getting hard. Stephanie was having an issue with trying to get all the bills out and collections and all that stuff. So that was one of the considerations, was try to alleviate the burden on staff, because we were so short-staffed and everyone was wearing so many hats. You know, it's like, let's just let them do it. Also in the agreement is that, you know, I provide monthly report on the revenues and expenses, and George and I spoke today, and he hadn't seen the revenues, and I said, well, I send it in every month's report. So I gave you all in this packet all of last year's revenues for all of the city accounts, as well as all of the Airbnb and home away. Because that's actually a mixed check, because some of it's coming out of county, some of it's coming out of city. It was originally set up to just be city, so I can't break it up, because Airbnb nor home away will give us a register on who they collected from and how much. So I'm just crediting all of that to the city's account, as it's a city payment.
Makes sense. Any other questions, Ms. Mayor?
I know this is a tough call, but I mean, just give me a guesstimation on how many man hours, you know, that you maybe put in a month's time on all the duties that you said you removed from the city.
Well, Pearl does most all of that. I know some people think just Pearl answers the phone, but Pearl takes care of all the billing. She prints it, she updates the Excel spreadsheet on payments. She creates, I mean, it's a daily process when checks come in, that we have to make separate deposit slips. We make copies of the checks, copies of the report that they send back in. We give those to the county. If y'all would like, I can start giving you a copy of those as well, you know, to the city, but we have to make copies of all of that stuff. We keep a copy in-house of the report they send back, the check they sent, and then we have copies of the deposit slips and that stuff. So it's a daily thing as far as deposits and recording the checks. Bills have to go out by the 20th of each month, and then they are usually start coming in around the beginning of the month. So, and she handles the whole Excel spreadsheet, what payments. Also, any questions that Reynolds will come and ask, you know, did you get my payment, or, you know, I can't make my payment this time, or whatever. She handles those. So, I mean,
15 to 20?
yeah.
A week?
No, be a
A
month.
month.
I'm trying to identify the gaps we're trying to close. So it looks like the agreement does distinctly say that the taxes can be paid directly to the county. So we've got that there. And then it looks like it says in reporting and auditing, a list of revenues received and expenditures made with city hot funds by tourism department during the previous month, or provide a, my apologies. And then the other question was on the ability to compound, and it sounds like we can compound where it is. So what other gaps are we trying to
I was
address?
thinking that, you know, from one standpoint or a couple of standpoints, you know, we kind of have a fiduciary responsibility to collecting the hot tax. And, you know, one, that it's collected, and two, that it's collected correctly, kind of from everyone and who is receiving it. And then we remit it to the county. I thought that, to me, that made more sense. That, so we had an opportunity to kind of make a copy of it, check it, you know, go through it, and then remit it. It wasn't that, you know, I was thinking that we could, you know, divert it. Now, on the $50,000 that we have, you know, city council approved, directed, or city council directed projects, I would just like to see that on our side of the register, because it's monies that we were going to determine how it was going to be spent. I thought it was an easier solution for us to hold the money and then disperse it as we directed, versus coming back through the CBB back to a vendor to do something or whatever. I think it makes a cleaner distinction between here's $50,000 that was allocated for a city council directed project, and then everything else is run by the CBB. And that's what I was thinking.
Well, I would still be accountable for that money, which is why I was staying over there. And when, during budget season, we discussed that if there was a certain project y'all wanted me to do, whether it be wayfinding signs, I could go out and get RFPs or bids on that, bring them back here, y'all could go through them, decide what you wanted to do, or if it's kiosks, or if it's, restoration of a museum or something like that, to me, it doesn't make sense to move the money back out here, back over here, and then back over here to go and pay somebody else, when it's right there. You tell me what you want it to pay for, then, it's approved by the city council and it gets paid. I mean, I'm answer to you guys, and what this all seems like is that there is a mistrust of how I, as the CBB director, is handling the money, or going to be handling the money. As if, you won't see that $50,000 if I keep it in the account that it was set up for. So.
I can see, so I love a clean, crisp process with clear line of sight, and that's what it sounds like your recommendation would do. But then I can also see from an efficiency perspective, it would create some inefficiency. So then the question is, which do we covet more right now, efficiency or clean crispness? And that's hard for me because both of them are massively important to me, but that's what it sounds like to me. I don't think the intention is a trust thing, although I can see how that can be perceived. I don't think it's that. I think it's just you've got two competing priorities. One is let's keep everything really clean, line of sight. Here you go, no questions. But doing so adds work to our staff and adds back and forth. So which one do we want to err on the side of?
Well, and George and I spoke
Everyone signed
earlier.
up. I'll call you. You'll have your opportunity.
When George and I spoke earlier, one thing he had mentioned is that he wanted all the city hotel tax payments to come back through here, and be processed here, and then a check written over to the county that would then come to me, and stuff like that. Well, that's what we were trying to eliminate anyway. It took me almost a year to get all the short-term rentals used to paying Somerville County, and put in the correct funds, and separate into a spreadsheet, city and, county, and to have to go back and tell them again, okay, sorry, now you're gonna go back to writing it to the city. There's gonna be some upset
Do
people.
we have any further questions for Ms. Harris?
I did. For housekeeping purposes, I think it would be good if on the accounting, if you could actually label it that it's city, because it just says.
Well, I only give you all the cities, so I'm not giving you the county portion.
Right. I get that.
I will label it city. and
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just saying.
As I told George
So
earlier,
you
the
know,
monthly
so.
reports, when I first started doing this, I had the names of all the hoteliers and lodging partners, and Michael told me to not put that on there because it's a matter of public record. Because our agenda goes out to everybody, and that not all of our short-term rental lodging partners are wanting everybody in the city to see how much money they're bringing in. So you've been getting numbers, but it has not had the names on it. But I did include that for all of last year and up to date here, so that you kind of know what that is.
Right, and then, it sounds to me like that, if we could do it, and we would probably need our attorney to let us know if we even could do it, but if we could do it, it's gonna come at a cost. I mean, we very well could have to hire someone to handle both ends of the receiving and distributing, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
In our-
Two different. You're dealing with two different, governmental entities, financial departments.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to hear from Councilmember Freeze if he feels like, because, if that $40,000 or if that $50,000 turns into $40,000 or $45,000, or potentially even less with the costs that we incur, would that still be worth it to you?
I don't, it's not an either or. For me, I want to see the $50,000 on our side of the ledger. They can continue, the CBB can continue to send out the mail, send out the other things. We receive the money, take a copy of the checks and submit it, deposit it, then turn around and hand it back over to the county. I'm not saying that we assume any other responsibility for additional work. That work continues to be done out of the CBB. But we are going to receive the checks, make copies of the checks, handle the deposit, so that we know when it comes time for the audit, we know how much has been received, and we can quickly give that information to the auditor. I just feel like we have a fiduciary responsibility to be handling the hot tax money that the city is generating. I don't think we can defer it and hand it off to our friends at the county and then assume our liability.
How is collecting
We can ask
checks,
them.
making check copies, making deposits not additional work?
Oh, I'm not talking, I thought he was asking about the billing hours that was spent by the CVB.
Well, yeah, so if we're doing it, they're not doing it, we're doing it, so that's additional capacity required, so additional
Y'all
expense.
need to bill it so that you can attach the checks to the bill.
Or would there even be a benefit to just getting an annual, if you want the 50,000 in our account for a budget item consideration, is there a send a check? And then they have that's as a debit and credit, it comes out of their books and into ours. Is that a happy medium?
Yeah, Stan, do you have any opinion about our fiduciary responsibility to collect the hot tax?
Well, I'm listening to the discussion, certainly. I think the reality is we need to be able to independently account for the money that is the city's hot funds. Whether that's done through the county's collection part or ours, I don't know that it matters to me, but I think we need to be able to clearly delineate what portion is collected on behalf of the city.
Which it is. And as I said earlier, if y'all don't just want the spreadsheet of it, I can actually give y'all the copies of the checks and the reports that come in with it that I would give the county. I can always bring them down here and give them to Rosario or whoever.
Yeah.
Stacy, would that help you with the audit prep?
Probably make it easier if we had the readily available.
Well, I was just gonna say, in our interlocal agreement on page 22C, county shall maintain the hot funds provided by the city under this agreement in a separate account. County shall not commingle the funds in that account with any other money or maintain them in any other account. And Pearl is making copies of everything, so she's got a paper trail. She's got everything we need without putting additional work on city staff.
But Stacy's saying if she just got a copy of all that they already have a copy of for themselves, if you had a copy of that on file here, that helps.
Yeah,
Answer
if we
those
had
questions
one right
and,
here,
yeah.
obviously that'd be easier if they needed it.
So, we can go back and
Yeah.
make copies of the reports as well as the check from
Yeah.
each city lodging partner and give that to you. We keep those in a file over there and anybody can kind of look at them.
Any further discussion up here?
Well, would you need a copy of the checks? I don't want any more work on them if you don't need it. You just need an accountant?
It's gonna depend on what the auditors ask for, so
Okay.
it's just one of those things, we may or may not need it, but if we had it, we wouldn't have to bother.
Well,
Harris in the middle of something too.
Well, I get involved anyway. The
Yeah.
county auditors come and ask me when it's auditing time. That's my responsibility is open up the books and.
And she's already making a copy, right? So instead of saying copy one,
Yeah,
she's saying
just
copy
make
two.
copies and I'll just deliver one over here and one over there.
Any further discussion up here?
Does that cover some of those
This
gaps?
is cost related to that.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, we're good up here?
Mhm.
All right,
Thank you.
Angelica Smith. Would like that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Thank you.
I signed up to speak to cover what Kelly's already covered. So,
What?
Is there nothing to add?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheyenne? Okay.
I just have a question more. Oh, Cheyenne Smart, 202nd Street. One, there's not a clean split. This is two separate government entities that are combined into one that really nobody in the state of Texas has really ever heard of. It's a very uncommon thing that cities do, just so you know. She's called, we've all talked about it, every state entity you can find. We don't normally merge a city and a county in one town, in one county, and to do what we do every day with like what she does with combined money. So it's hard to find an exact paper trail. And like she said, Airbnb does pay just one place. They don't give you who, like this Airbnb is in the county, this Airbnb is the city. They don't tell you that. They don't want you to know. They're very closed off. The Airbnb is not the nicest people ever. The other thing is the $50,000 came out of the general fund originally, it was hot tax. It has to stay hot tax. And I get that you want to put it back into the city because it's city money, but it's hot tax and can only be spent certain ways. And you can just say, okay, I want to do this project. I don't think it's worth it trying to fight to put the money back and forth when you can just ask and she'll, I'm sure she'll do a project that's worth the money, or that's for the county, the city, because that's what she wants to do. She wants to promote tourism and promote her town, and that's what she's been doing this whole time. She's done the better part of 10 years, I think.
Well, first off, we're not trying to take any money away from her.
Well, I get that, and that's not what I meant, but it's the fact of moving the money around for no reason. To make it clean.
Ms. Streeter?
Ann Streeter, owner of the only lodging partner that is here to speak. 205 Southwest Bernard. Most of you know that I'm not a fan that we turned the city hot tax and merged and gave county the authority of it, since the majority of the hot tax money comes from the city. But we did that. We have an interlocal agreement that states how things should be run. I'm the one that brought up that we should ask for some money that we can do some of these city-related projects that we wanted related to tourism, the welcome sign, which I understand the CVB paid for. That was the city's welcome sign. We talked about doing it towards, the water tower, and we've talked about the wayfinder signs, which the only thing that actually has occurred, city council related, is zero at this juncture because she took the city's welcome sign on herself and did that. I'm concerned about double accounting for money. I am concerned about going back and forth amongst the hotel partners because we already have a nightmare of trying to get all the information to Kelly so that she can understand how to run the CVB appropriately, to promote tourism, but most particularly to drive heads into beds. That is her job. Her job has accounting in it. Her job has financial relations to it. But her job, the job of that entire department, is to put heads in the beds of lodging partners. Anything that takes away from that, takes away from the revenue that is generated by the lodging partners, takes away from sales taxes that the people who come and stay in our hotels generate, takes away from the money you want to do tourism issues. I'm not happy with everything that the CVB does. They know that. I'm very vocal, as you might know. But this discussion is stupid. This discussion is about control and trust and lack of it. She needs to do her job. She doesn't need her staff doing extra copies, which does have an expense related to paper and ink. She needs her staff doing their job, which is driving heads into beds. Period, the end.
Any further citizen comments on this matter? We're going to take no action.
No. Well, I mean, do we take no action if there's an agreement on some actions that are gonna happen out of this conversation?
Stan?
So we have our lawyer and we have our city secretary saying copies would be of benefit. So, and we have our CVB director saying, I can do that. So I see that as something that needs to happen, that folks are agreeing on happening. Is that a no action And
I would just be a direct staff.
okay, that's what I'm.
Okay, so we're going to direct staff to, what was the agreement that we had? Make the additional copies?
Well, but it's not our staff to direct.
Still.
She is,
city.
yes, she is. That's
Okay.
right, yes, she
Control
is.
it.
Mhm.
That's why I'm sitting out here.
Anything further on that item? We all understand our assignments?
So,
That's
so there's no action on
It's a direct
the
staff.
agenda item, it's just directing staff to make more copies.
Ms. Harris, please join us back up here. All righty. All right, is there anything else on this agenda that we need to stand for? About?
I have perhaps on mine, yeah, I think that's it, and yeah.
Let's move on to item 5, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding a resolution supporting a request for driveway for the property located at northeast corner of Bernard and US 67. I mean, I read right at Ms. King.
Last meeting, the council asked me to draft a resolution regarding the driveway at that location, and so I drafted one. City Attorney Lowry has seen it. Councilmember Freeze and Councilman Conrad have both seen it, provided input, and what you have in your packet is the final draft.
Citizen, I get it. Council comments, questions on this one? Okay, any citizen comments? No? Okay, do I have a motion
So moved.
to? Hold on.
Second.
Hold on.
Sorry, ma'am.
Motion to approve resolution number R 2023.04.11A as presented. Okay. I have a motion for Mr. Johnson.
Second.
Second for Mr. Freeze. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 5-0 approved.
What was the resolution number? Was it B?
R 2023.04.11.A.
Oh, dot A, okay.
Let's move on to item 6, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding implementing a standard process for partnering with property owners on streets not properly abandoned by the city. Ms. Conrad.
Just discussion, I shared after our last meeting, I had council members Harris's voice like spinning in my head around, done some things really not great in the past, whether intentionally or negligently, or we just didn't have our ducks in a row. And it's created issues now, like having abandoned alleys, abandoned perhaps streets that weren't done properly. And so again, kind of in the competing priorities, there's one priority to go, listen, this is very difficult to try to manage and it's been done wrong. And so let's just, we can't solve for that, or it shouldn't be, what I keep hearing from Councilmember Harris is it shouldn't be at the property owner or developer's expense. And that just kept spinning in my head because I totally see that side. Then you have the other side, which is at some point we have to fix it. We can't just keep saying it's been done improperly, and so we just keep doing it improperly. So all I want to do is look at some potential solutions, and this is where Stan comes in because I feel like half my ideas are not legal. So we got to go to Stan, but I know, for instance, we can't just let folks have the property without purchasing it, but maybe we can look for other ways to offset costs. So for instance, if we find ourselves in a situation in which the city did not do something properly and yet we're looking to try to course correct, like this abandoned alley, maybe we can look to say, okay, can we offset expenses somewhere else for the developer? So can we waive permit fees for the developer up to a certain amount? I don't have the solution yet. I just wanted to, before I start doing any legwork on it, I wanted to gauge the interest in, can we try to come up with some almost like first pass? So when we find ourselves in this situation, can we have a standard first pass that this is what we're going to try to do as our first approach? And then if that doesn't work for that particular person, then we can start moving down okay, what do we do in this particular instance? But can we at least have somebody comes into the building official office and Jody identifies this issue or Stacy identifies this issue. And it's like, hey, here's a solution that we could try and offer that. And then if that solution doesn't work, then we can start looking for individual solutions. But to try to come up with something, just in these instances, hopefully rare, but likely not, where we didn't do some paperwork properly in the past and it's coming back to bite us. So that was an example that I thought of, is, hey, can we offset fees in another way to try to compensate? I mean, you are gonna have property, so it's not like you're paying for nothing, but is there something we can do to try to help with that? So I wanted to do some legwork. I know that probably half my ideas won't be legal, and that's why I need Stan. But wanted to start trying to figure out ways to right some of the things that haven't been done just there yet.
I've got a question. I mean, it's a Stan question. Property that has been abandoned, has not been used, it's totally abandoned, but the city still owns it. Or I own it, but for 15 years, my neighbor has been using the property I owned, even though I wasn't I mean, it was mine, I owned it, but I wasn't using it, I'd abandoned it. So what rights do I have, or the city, as the owner, when somebody else has been using that property? Because isn't there something in the statutes or somewhere that says that if you've been using the property for X amount of time and nobody said anything, then it's yours?
Well, there is the concept of adverse possession,
Yeah, that's it.
but I think the misnomer about that is you have to take definitive steps to claim your adverse possession, legally speaking. It's more than just 10 years of continual use. So
There's something.
I guess let me back up a moment for my edification, maybe only here. How widespread of a problem is this?
In this whole Wolf City,
Yeah,
there's a whole
area.
side of town.
Yeah, there's a whole side of
Well,
town where this is.
So you start off, I mean, Ms. Conrad, to your point, you start off with the basic premise that if it's city-owned right-of-way, and I guess that's primarily what we're talking about, then
It's a 14,
It's an alleyway.
It's a 14-foot alleyway that was platted in these two plats over there in Wolf City. So it's 7 feet on
Okay.
each property owner.
On most sides.
well, so you got, however you slice it, it's a city asset. And there are legalities to selling or conveying away a city asset. One way you could do it, Ms. Conrad spoke to it, you could do an economic development agreement that if the developer or the applicant provided something of value to the tax roll, you could offset the cost of our conveyance back of that right of way. We could approach it that way. Otherwise, you could competitively bid it and sell it to the highest bidder. The other issue becomes, how old is this right of way? Do we have good records of where we got the right of way from? Because sometimes cities can abandon the right of way and one half goes to one side and the other half goes to the other side.
Which is pretty much how it's divided in that part of the city. Pretty much everybody's fence lines go back to back now, even though there was an alleyway through it. There just happens to be a few pieces of property that hasn't done that yet. So that was my point last meeting was, so are we gonna go back and make all of these other people who have already built their property lines up back to back against each other, make them buy that property now because it was an abandoned alleyway?
Well, depending on the situation, we could always simply abandon our rights. And that's separate and apart from selling our rights. Probably if we were going to sell our rights, it's because we found there to be some independent value in that right of way, as opposed to cleaning up the books, if you will.
Down.
Yeah, well,
Okay, so
problem
we
is
have
most people
options.
don't wanna buy that piece of property. They don't wanna buy 7 feet.
Right,
in the alleyway.
That's why I just want to talk about going forward, bless you. I just want to talk about, so last week is a perfect example. We were requested to make an exception based on property that they were claiming as, could be considered as their property, even though it really wasn't. And all I'm saying is, let's try to clean that up as much as we can. And then when they're coming, then maybe they're asking for a 4-foot exception instead of a 12-foot exception. So it sounds like there's solutions potentially.
Yeah, I think there's several options.
Awesome. So that's what I'd like to do is get
So we're
those
gonna
back.
have to go back and find those
Yeah.
old Wolf City records.
Yeah.
And so the city could technically abandon our rights on these alleys that have
Already
never
been
been
Right.
used for anything except for neighbor fences.
Right.
And then the people that are already using them are not gonna be liable to the city for any finances, because they have already got, that's already their property.
Yeah, I mean, once we, using that scenario, once we abandon our rights, we're out of it.
Awesome.
Okay,
So then does the city quit claim deed that property?
Well, that's probably, George, where I would stop short of doing that because I don't want to be in the chain of title. That goes back to my question of, do we have good records on how we obtain title to it? It's one thing to abandon our rights and let each side claim what they want, as opposed to us actually conveying a deed. Because that puts us into a trespass to try title lawsuit.
Wasn't it just the original city layout?
No, it was subsequent. It was 1926 or 28.
So we can get
something.
information to you, Stan, and then based on that, you can ask questions that we can answer.
Yeah.
Because even potentially it could be where we don't do that until somebody comes and says, hey, I want this, I want to do something on this property. And at that point, we already have an action. Oh, hey, we know this is gonna happen. Here's what we do when that comes to us.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion, is take it kind of
Awesome.
one case at a time, if you will. But I think you've got several options that you can clean this up.
Awesome.
on, like you said, that the economic development, if they're gonna build something on that property that is going to bring in tax dollars, like
Right.
this one property, they're talking about building, housing, affordable housing, duplexes or quadruplex or stuff like that. Is
Right.
that what you meant by bringing in a tax base?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we could choose to exchange city property of value in exchange for them providing an economic development benefit to the city.
Perfect. So are y'all good with me working with Stacy, get questions to Stan, Stan answers questions, and we can come back and go, here are our options.
I just have a quick question for Stan. So how is it more efficient to not just do it in one fell swoop and instead do it case by case?
Well, because I guess you could do that. It's just a matter of what kind of records do we have. I don't know what all is involved in gathering that data. It may be simple, it may be more complex. And so in my mind's eye, I was just envisioning taking on a subdivision by subdivision or a case by case basis. So as to not take on the great unknown, if you will.
Have good records and then we didn't keep good records.
If we abandon our rights, are we still holding title to the property? We just have let them use it? Is that what that means?
No, we would be abandoning it, and then the legal owner, typically under Texas law, when right of way is abandoned, it goes back to the property that it came from. And that's why, George, to your question, I would hesitate to issue a deed because we may not have that good of title records on literally what parcel each right of way came from. We would be abandoning our ownership of that property.
Okay, so we wouldn't be liable for anything that happened on it once we abandon it.
Correct, and we would do that by city ordinance.
Okay, I'll work with Stacy and Stan. We will bring options back for everybody to consider based on this question Stan asks and the answers we can provide. Sound good?
Wonderful.
That sounds good. So we need a city ordinance.
My only concern about that is where we have sold properties to some people, and we are talking about abandoning for others.
We're looking at, so the scope of this, as far as I was concerned, when I brought it, was to the properties that we've already abandoned, but didn't abandon properly. So the folks in which we've sold, so for instance, if we think about the street right here, if we think about the street down on Bernard Street, down on Gray Street, those are properties that we owned, that we had not yet abandoned, we just hadn't built on, and they came to us and asked us to abandon it and sell it.
Well,
So we didn't do things
There's also a
wrong.
difference between abandoning a street and
Yeah.
abandoning
An
an alleyway.
Yeah,
You know, a street, you probably have some right of ways, some easements and stuff like that. You know, that would be worth selling, but an alleyway,
when you've only got 14 feet in between two people, what are you gonna sell it for?
Right, but the scope of this is limited to what we've done, what we didn't get right, what we didn't do right, how do we fix it? But if it's somebody that comes to us and says, hey, you guys aren't using this street, I can think one
Or alley.
off the top of, or alley, off the top of my head, but we're not using it, but we never said we abandoned it, we never took action. That doesn't fall into this bucket. This is simply the ones, that's where you'd have to work with Stacy to identify what
But
those are.
what if the neighbors who are adjoining to that alley are using it, but it is not an improved street?
That's where I come to, if somebody wants to buy that property and develop on it, and that street isn't used, and that person comes to us and says, hey, I wanna buy this street, and the neighbor on the other side is using that street, it ain't theirs to use. So if somebody else wants to buy it, they can either buy their half, or they cannot, and it can get bought.
I don't think you
It's
can do that.
It's a
No.
street.
No, like, so this street right, Grace Street, people on each side had an option to buy it.
Yes.
Okay, and if you don't want to buy it, then the other person has kind of first rights to be able to buy the whole thing if the person on the other side doesn't want to buy it. If the person on the other side who doesn't want to buy it has been using it, it's not theirs to use. So they don't get to keep it.
But if you're bringing all this back to us in the future, then we can have this argument.
Right, but the scope of this, but to the point of, the scope of this is not
Julia's not there
future,
anymore.
yes. But the scope of this is that this isn't in future, somebody wants to buy something and somebody's using it. It's limited to the stuff we haven't done right.
Well, and the purpose of this agenda item was to see if there was even
Yeah.
interest in looking
Yeah.
into it further. So,
Okay.
So we have a director.
Yeah.
There is.
regardless of I'm gonna be mayor or not, that was. All right, let's move on to item 7, discussion,
Thank you.
consideration, and possible action
Thanks,
regarding
Dan.
the removal of a
Thanks.
board.
Are we through with Stan?
Are we through with Stan?
I am.
Anyone else need Stan? Okay, Stan, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
sir.
guys. Good night.
Okay, are we now ready to move on to the next item? Item 7, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding the removal of a member of the Historic Preservation Commission due to absences in accordance with the City of Gleno's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 14.03.003. Christine.
Ms. Holby came to me that Ms. Carver had informed her that she was a board member that had missed at least 3 consecutive meetings, which according to our ordinance, means they can be removed by council. So we are bringing that to you for your consideration.
Any questions or comments up here? Ms. Carver, do you have anything you'd like to add? No? Yes?
Do y'all have any questions?
No?
Have we documented that we've attempted to reach out to him and he is not attending and everything is dotted across T's?
Our records, of course, just like your meetings, they're all recorded. There are minutes to it that he's not here. We haven't heard from him, haven't seen him, or anything since December.
And they were all they were all actual meetings. There weren't any of them that were canceled or anything. They were all actual meetings.
How do you receive an agenda and notice of a meeting?
There's, first of all, they are scheduled, just like yours are. They're set dates for that, and then we get them all by email.
Any further questions from Ms.
And
Carver?
with that email, excuse me, Mayor, I apologize.
Anything else from Ms. Carver?
Thank you.
Go ahead, finish.
I was just gonna say, with that email, you get the agenda and the minutes, just like you do, or any other supplements that go with that, just like you would for city council.
Awesome. They see posted on the board, outside.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any citizen comments on this one? All right, Stacy, how do we need to handle this? We just need to make a motion to terminate the commission member? Okay, do I have that motion? Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
Second. Who is the second?
Me,
Okay. A motion from
Ask
Mr.
two
Freeze
questions.
and a second from Ms. Conrad. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 5-0 approved. Okay, we're going to move on to our consent agenda. All consent agenda items are considered routine by city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of this item unless the council member requests an item be removed and considered separately. Any items you would like to have removed?
10.
Any additional items you'd like to have removed? Okay, the items on the consent agenda are consider approval of other action regarding the March 20th, 2023 regular city council minutes. Consider approval and other action regarding the March 2023 council annual report. Do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion from Mr. Joslin, a second from Mr. Freeze. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 0 approved. Tonight, let's move on to item 10, consider approval of other action regarding the March 2023 financial report. Ms. Walker.
It's on page 102 is my question. We've got bills dispersed of $170,625.41. Payments received of $171,000 and odd, but service categories is $167,000. And I don't understand the bills dispersed is $170, but service categories, I don't understand why there's a $3,000 discrepancy there.
What page are you on here?
102.
102? All right, ask me that one more time.
Okay, so bills dispersed was 170, but service categories is 167,000. You know, and odd,
I'm looking on.
okay,
page
bills,
102.
102.
Uh-huh.
You've got billing period, council report, total utility bills dispersed is 170,000. And then the very last category, it says service categories, and it's only 167,000. And my question is just, I understand that payments received, we might have got payments from a past due or something like that, but the service categories, why is there a discrepancy?
I wouldn't know without asking, so if you can give me a heads up next time, I'd be more than happy to
I
find that
think I did
answer.
last month. and
Well, we
I
had a
didn't-
different issue last month because that was the Taco Bell
Okay,
overpayment. But, yeah, without asking and having a chance to look into it, I wouldn't be able to answer. I can shoot you an email though.
yes,
tomorrow.
please.
Anything further on that?
No, that's all.
So do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
I have a motion from Ms. Walker, a second from Ms. Conrad. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 5-0 approved. We're going to move on to our staff reports. First one up, Public Works Director Holder. Mr. Holder, do you have anything you'd like to add? Any questions for Mr. Holder?
Where is that technical work group meeting?
Excuse me?
Where is that technical work group meeting tomorrow?
That's at the TxDOT facility. I asked them, if we could invite elected officials and they declined.
I bet they did.
I am attending.
Wonderful.
Yeah, they extended the invitation to him today, so, I don't know, I asked maybe at least one or two, and they came back, and said, well, no.
Anything further from Mr. Holder? No.
I saw Director Holder out with a shovel, just sweating to death for an hour digging. It was really impressive. So you set a good example to your
Was
group.
that today?
That was not today. Did you do it today?
We did the other side.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for that. Set a good example.
I also have a thank you, a personal thank you. I had, for you as well, Stacy, and for you, I had a phone call about water, a water bill. And the water department responded quickly and answered questions, and we got it resolved really quickly with the help of both our water department and our front staff. So I appreciate their help.
Thank you. Next one, Police Chief Martin. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No.
Any questions for Police Chief Martin?
Thank you for very detailed.
Yeah, just
Like y'all were busy this month.
a couple of quick ones. Didn't you have some kind of chart or graph or something that you provided at one
I've
point?
been having some technical difficulties with it, so
Okay.
that's my
Okay.
fault. So
All right.
I'm trying.
And thanks for the update of the reports. So I appreciate that.
Anything further? We'll move on to Building and Planning Department. Ms. King, do you have anything? Or Mr. McKeithen, do you have anything on this one?
No.
Any questions?
Are we down so much on permits because we don't have a building official? Or is it just right now with the price of
It's
supplies
just the
and
natural
stuff,
ebb and
things are
flow.
Okay.
It's the price of things.
Okay, that's kind of what I was wondering.
This March is a hard month.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to code enforcement animal control report. Anything that either one of you would like to add to that one? No? Questions on this one?
Tell Christie, thank you for the detail.
We're going to move on to the CBB report. If there's anything you'd like to add? Any questions from us here?
Just really quickly, the event that you're going to instead of the small business, I heard you say something about like we're the biggest.
It's the Texas Travel Information Center in Denison, which is right on the
Right.
Oklahoma border. And they called to ask me to come and set up a booth and speak to them because we are the #1 attraction in their particular travel information center. So
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah. Do they have visitors from Oklahoma? Because
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so you'll be you'll be hitting Oklahoma residents as well there. Awesome. Okay.
Well, thank you, Kelly and Angel, for the good reports.
Okay, let's move on to city secretary's report. Ms. King, anything you'd like to add? Any questions for Ms. King?
Thank you, Julie.
I'll move on to our city administrator report. Mr. McCutcheon, anything you'd like to add?
No, I'd just say I understand it's a monthly report. And when I'm here a month, I was only here a week, so it's a weekly report.
that works.
Thank you.
But
We appreciate
All
it.
right, so we'll move on to mayor and council member reports. Any reports anyone would like to?
I just have a quick one on our visit to Austin, just to share with the group. We got to go present in front of the land use.
Land use.
There we go.
House Land Use
The House
Committee.
Land Use Committee. It went really, really well. And for the benefit of anybody, I know there's been a lot of information out there that's been wildly inaccurate. We were presenting solely on the ask that they make change to a significantly outdated piece of legislation that includes property owners having to divide their property up into 525-foot lengths in order to be able to come into the city. So it was really primarily on behalf of county residents, or property owners, I should say, that may be interested in annexing. Now, a byproduct is it could alleviate some of the work demand on our city staff if we're not having to conduct 5 annexations just to meet this ridiculous 525-foot limitation. But it went really well. The representatives were shocked to even learn that that was the case. They didn't seem particularly versed in that, or I mean, again, they were utterly shocked. And I think we were also I'll say it, the favorite presentation of the day, because there was nobody screaming and yelling and complaining. And it's really a very rare win-win-win where the water district was good with it. It was good for the property owners. It was good for the citizens. There wasn't anybody yelling or complaining. So it ended the night on a really positive note. So I feel pretty good about it moving forward. And ultimately, the winners here will be any property owner interested in coming into the city who has more than 525 feet. It can significantly alleviate the headache, the time, the cost. So it's a big win for county property owners or future property owners.
I would just like to also note that Councilmember Conrad went on 0 notice and rescheduled her entire life. And several of us couldn't make it. We had conflicts, and the feedback that I got, she did an outstanding job representing the city. So, such a good job, she might get to do it again.
Was there early?
Yeah.
And stayed late. We appreciate your
Yeah,
effort.
it was an 8 a.m. appointment that they saw us at 8:15 p.m. So it was a very long day, but it was a wonderful experience to see the asks that are going to our state, and most of them are ridiculous, and I was trying not to balk at every one of them. So it was a great experience to see and participate in.
I'll keep this short, but sometimes they say you find politics and politics finds you, and I just want you to know this very well might be my last meeting. I'm going to do my best to make the May. I thought this was my last meeting, but there was an agenda item put on the next one that I would like and love to be a part of because it's a comprehensive plan. You know, I want to thank the citizens that gave me this opportunity and all the support, letting me put my signs in your yard and your businesses and everyone up here. And I want you to know it's been an incredible honor to serve with you guys. And our boards are fantastic and all the work that you guys do. And our staff, I look at the talent that you know, that we're all surrounded by, and I'm blown away with where we're at and where the city's going. Thank you for the privilege, so.
And thank you for serving with us.
I went to Austin this month also. George was unable to go, so I went in his place. And it was for tax 21, but it went pretty good. We had about 10 appointments set up with legislatures, representatives. We got to meet with their staff. But that's okay. It went better than I thought it would. And it wasn't as bad as I was dreading Austin. And it went really good. But I just want to let you know, we did have that. There's another one coming up. There's one every month, but I imagine George will be taking the next one. He don't mind driving in Austin.
Thank you for going. That's awesome. Yeah.
It was
Any
good.
further? No further reports?
Okay, then I'll finish this one. No.
All right, there being no further matters before we have an adjourn at 6:50.
Look at there.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Great meeting.